This podcast may contain paid advertisements, but more on that later. Welcome to the O'Connor Bootstrap Podcast, your go-to resource for unraveling the intricacies of business and leadership, honing in on the essence of bootstrapping a business from scratch. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur, a dedicated bootstrapper, or a leader navigating life's various challenges, this podcast is crafted just for you. I'm Isaiah O'Connor, your friendly neighborhood entrepreneur, and my mission is to guide you towards personal and professional growth. Let's embark on this journey together. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the O'Connor Bootstrap Podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about my origin story. Now, I am actually revisiting this origin story, the journey I've been on to become an entrepreneur, to build a business, to start a podcast, to start a blog. I've talked about this before. Matter of fact, I've called it an origin story before several times. Now, the thing is, it's been a good 2 years so that I was gone, so I figured it'd be a good thing to do an update and kind of, for all my new listeners, which hopefully will be coming across, they'll kind of get to know me, get to know where I'm from, why I do what I do, all that good stuff. And I figured it'd be good to revisit. So with jumping into that, why do I call this an origin story? Why not just an introduction or getting to know? Well, it's because of what an origin story is. An origin story should be compelling, it should be interesting, it should explain the why behind the who, which is very important. Now, because my favorite example is Spider-Man. Now, I like Spider-Man. He's been one of my favorite superheroes since I was a kid. And my dad had a book with all the superhero origin stories in it. The Hulk, the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man. And I got to read it. The original Spider-Man origin story. Which has been done to death in the movies. But that's neither here nor there. Point being is, most superheroes can have some sort of origin. They get their powers, they do this or that. Spider-Man famously bit by the radioactive spider. Superman just is super. Batman has his parents murdered in front of him. All these different events kind of change who they were and why they become the way they are. So Superman's not so good at that, but you know. Batman is, and a lot of the Marvel characters, quite honestly, are better at that. Who and why the person is who they are. And the biggest one is with Spider-Man is he starts off as a kind of a selfish kid. He's wanting to get back at the bullies in his life. He decides he's going to take his superpowers and just make money, get wealthy, and is not necessarily a good kid. Not a bad kid, but not really a good kid. Kind of selfish and seeking his own glory. And of course, in the original comic, his Uncle Ben dies and tells him, with great power comes great responsibility. And that is a massively famous line, and it's very important. Now, this sort of mirrors my journey as I kind of reflect on my past. And I look back and realize, yeah, there's been some entrepreneurial inclination with me. Now, growing up, I saw my mom and my dad turned out to have a bit of an entrepreneurial streak in them. I don't know how much it fits the classic entrepreneur, more than they just need to take care of stuff, and so this is what they did. My mom ran a daycare. She needed extra income to raise me and my other 4 siblings, so she opened a daycare so she could be at home with us. So she opened a daycare, had kids at our house watching the kids all day. And then my dad, he worked a lot of businesses, but for a while he opened and operated a janitorial service. And during that time, I got to work with him and learn how to work. And he imparted into me the work ethic I needed to do this, which is amazing, and succeed in regular jobs too. And also, I picked up a little bit on the intricacies of running a business. I picked up a little bit about that. And another thing I picked up on that is that he has this determined to get the job done, rain or shine, even when he was sick. And that really left a mark on me. And then as I grew up, not just with my dad and mom working there, I started selling golf balls. Because with 5 kids, middle class neighborhood, my mom and dad did not have a lot of extra money to give us for allowance. I was allowed to live at my parents' house. That was my allowance. So to make up for this, I had to go do something. So I went out and I started my own little business. I started selling golf balls to the golfers. I'd go out when the golf course was closed. I would go out during the fall and spring and winter when there was no golfers out there, and I'd collect golf balls. And I'd go out and I'd sell golf balls and sometimes soda to golfers as they walk by on the golf course by the fence. So I started doing this to make money. And my brother, don't even get me started, my younger brother, he was always doing something to make money. He was always selling, always entrepreneur. So just kind of surrounded by this stuff. And even in college, I had an idea of starting a web design company. And I kind of poked at it and played with it a little bit, but I never got that one off the ground. Now, none of these ideas really went anywhere, but they were short-lived. But the entrepreneurial bug kind of was in there. The spark was in there. Now, that leads me on to the next chapter, but before I get into that chapter, we'll take a pause here for our mid-podcast break. And welcome to the mid-break, everyone. This is the part of the show where I get to thank any patrons and read out 5-star Apple reviews. And mentioning that, today we have a new 5-star review on Apple Podcast. And it is from Balloon Lady Diana, and she says this: I enjoy finding new ideas. Isaiah makes being a person who ventures into entrepreneurship more encouraging and very practical, with the insight of seeking goals and pushing forward even if you make mistakes. He's also very friendly and understands the walk of business. I enjoyed the podcast. I recommend it. Thank you so much, Balloon Lady Diana. And as a matter of fact, Balloon Lady Diana was a guest on our show, and may be again in the future. We will see. She's very nice, and I will drop a link into the description to those podcasts. Anyway, there is actually no new patrons this week. That's okay. Just remember, if you become a patron, even try us out for a free 7-day trial, you can come in, join us on Discord, check out early episodes and ad-free episodes. As when I do get some advertisers, I will set it up so their ads will not be on the Discord version of this podcast. Anyway, let's get back to the podcast. Speaking of which. Okay, so let's get back to this. As I was just talking about, I was growing up with entrepreneurial influences. My mom and dad really impacted me. Always have to work for my own income. That helped. Now, a huge turning point hit when I went off to a place called Youth with a Mission. Now, Youth with a Mission is a Christian missionary organization, and they run several different training schools. They run missionary trips. They do a lot of stuff. Now, I did mine. I went off and I worked with Youth with a Mission in Denver. Now, while I was there, one of the things that we did was doing balloon twisting. And that I really liked. I'd tried it from time to time since like 16 or 17. And I tried a little bit more when I was 18, 19. But when I got there and we were doing this for the mission trips, I really had a lot of fun with it. And I really practiced it more and more and more. Now, another big thing happened was I met this girl there from Norway. And we wound up getting married. And yeah, we've been married now for 20 years. So that was a big thing. And because I married a Norwegian, I did move to Norway, which is very important. So, but before we got married, I was with the organization. Not only did I learn the basics of making balloon animals, oh my goodness, I can't talk, but I also learned how to teach balloon animals and teach people how to make these and go on mission trip with them, which was really cool. I also learned how to juggle and do some just fun stuff. Now, these experiences kind of laid the groundwork for my current business. Now, when my time with missionary organization done, and we moved from California to Norway, and it turned out to be quite the struggle to try to get a job in Norway when your skills are customer service, management, especially retail management, and sales. When you don't speak the language, it's very difficult. So, coming to Norway, I could barely even get the equivalent of a part-time, minimum wage, very low-paid job, and it was not able to do much to get ahead. Now, after struggling for a couple of years, very low income, not being able to get good jobs, not having any sort of degree for higher education, struggled. I was working at a restaurant, and I was cutting up kilos, multiple kilos, pounds and pounds and pounds for my American friends of carrots, and I was bored, and so I started listening to audiobooks. One of the audiobooks I listened to was the book 48 Days to the Work You Love by Dan Miller. Now, as of this recording, Dan Miller has passed away, sadly, a couple months before. I forget the exact date, but he just passed away this year, 2024. But before he passed away, I was extremely blessed to have gotten to meet him and interview him on this very podcast. I have that podcast up. You can go look it up. If I remember, I'll try to put it in the show notes. But his book completely turned my life around. That was the spider bite moment, as it were. That was the moment that made me start thinking about doing something other than just trying to survive by working a job. So, that kind of started the spark. I started thinking about what I could do to start my own business. And I started thinking about doing the balloon animals. And despite some reservations initially from my wife, I decided to start a business doing balloon animals because I had done balloons for charity events and people loved it. So I figured I might as well try it. Now, of course, jumping from a employee to a business owner was not as seamless as I had anticipated. The initial year brought in less income than a traditional full-time job's monthly income. The whole year I had made less than a month's income. And I was struggling so hard to succeed. I was freaking out. I knew how to make balloons. I knew how to do management, but I didn't know anything else about business. I'm sitting here bootstrapping it. I mean, I started my business with a web page, a free stack of business cards from Vistaprint, a bag of balloons, and a pump. Right? That's it. And I didn't know really how to do the whole accounting thing. I didn't know how to do the marketing thing. I had a pretty good idea of sales, but you have to market and get people in before you can sell. So that was a struggle. And it really was very stressful. I was panicking. I had not a clue. I had wished I had a podcast like this at the time to listen to. I had never thought of looking at bootstrapping or how to run a business. Again, read a lot of books and kept going. Now, one of the things is balloon twisting, being a clown, is not nearly as marketable in Norway as it is in the United States, but balloon decor is. And so I took a course in balloon decor, and that course not only taught how to make balloon decor, but they taught the business of doing balloon decor. That was through Qualitex. They taught me how to market, how to sell, how to reach out to different clients, and which clients to reach out to grow my business. So I did. And I started reaching out to event companies. I landed one of the biggest ones here. And as they say, the rest is history. My balloon business really took off. Now, in the entire 10 years I've been doing this in business, I've never hit a full-time income doing balloons. It's really, really difficult to do in a country where your business is not very well known. It's getting there, but it's been a struggle with a fairly niche market that's growing. So, but I did pretty good. I kept growing it. The first year I went from around $1,000 for the year to 2,000 to 20,000, I think, to 30,000 for the year. Just under for the 1 year. So every year I really, really grew, and then hit some major challenges. And a lot of these challenges are documented with these podcasts and blogs. But in 2019, I lost my biggest client because they cut out their budget for balloons. And even though I'd lost my biggest client, I lost about 40% of my income, which sucked. That was a huge hit. However, the years immediately prior, they represented something like 70% of my income. So with I grew my business pretty big. Even though I had a revenue loss, my overall business had grown by quite a bit. However, what came around the corner in 2019 was COVID-19. And the entire event industry is here in Norway and around the world just went completely dormant. Now, obviously, this was really, really rough on my business. I made $1,000 US roughly for 2020 and $2,000 for 2021. Not anywhere near enough to live off of. Was getting some government support, but that was pretty darn rough. However, looking back, I did pretty good. Not a lot. I didn't make a lot of money, but I have friends that just had to shut down their business completely. Some came back, some did not. Some went bankrupt. Some made it through, but massively in debt. And only one other balloon artist that I know in my little community here actually made any money at all. So making money when everyone else is losing money, I did pretty well. And I think I'm going to go talk about how I did that. And one of the biggest things is I kept my overheads way, way low, because if you can keep your overhead low, you can survive a lot easier. I also had no business debt. So no overhead or low overheads, no debt makes it a lot easier to survive something like a worldwide worldwide pandemic that shuts down everything. So that I made it through. Now, throughout this whole time, especially through 2020, in 2019 as well, as an aside, I noticed that my in my little write up here that I did, I forgot to mention, how did I start the podcast? Well, there's this friend of mine named Jason St. Clair. He has a podcast as well over on athos.com, ATHEOZ.com, and a blog he started. And he asked me to start writing for the blog, and we share the blog post, and it's still up there. We're still sharing the blog. He reached out to me before that, and he says, hey, I'm putting together like this business company to help out people doing business, and you've succeeded in business for years, and why don't you join me? So after going back and forth, I decided, okay, I'll do it. So we started with the blog, and we started writing blogs, and he said, you know what, maybe we should do a podcast too. So we started doing a podcast, and then he said, you know, let's each do our own podcast separately, and we'll try to drive business back to the website. And thus, the O'Connor Bootstrap Podcast was born. And I've done this throughout this whole ups and downs of business, talking about business. Now, if you remember that I told you when I first started my business, I was in big trouble because I had no clue what I was doing. Well, then why now do I feel like, without having a degree, can I talk about being a bootstrapper? Experience. I am where I am now with my business from experience. I heard one story one time. Guy goes up to this famous businessman that was super wealthy and doing a great job, and was being sought by multiple people to get his business advice. And so this young man walks up to him and goes, so, what's the secret of your success, man? Can you tell me? He's like, sure. Good decisions. Young man goes, good decisions. Okay, great. How do you know how to make good decisions? The wise old man goes, experience. And the young man looks and goes, okay, cool. Now, how do you get experience? The old man looks at him, smiles, says, bad decisions. Yep, I am here because I made a lot of business mistakes. But I've learned. I've been forced to learn. And when I started this podcast, I had to use my research skills to start researching everything and digging into everything I can. So I have learned a ton about business. I've started reading tons and tons of business books, reading blog posts, watching business YouTube channels, and just doing it has brought me to the point where I feel like I can talk about this stuff because I've been there. I've done that. I've got the t-shirts. So that brings us to today and what's going on with my business and what's going on with the podcast. Well, I already did the We're Back podcast and explained why I'm back. But right now, to bring you up to date in this podcast, my business has gotten hit again. There was some recovery in 2022. However, in the last year, the event and the balloon industry has experienced some pretty big downturns. there's a huge helium shortage here in Norway. We get most of our helium from Ukraine and or Russia, which as of today, which is February 16th, 2024, at the time of recording, they're kind of at war, and that's slightly made getting helium extremely difficult to get a hold of. So with helium not being able to get a hold of, and the overall economic downturn that we've seen here locally has not helped, businesses are not spending extra money like they used to, and so my business has dropped again down to not much. So what do I go from here? Well, I am, with my balloon business, have decided to move the focus on there from the full-on, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to grow, this is something that's going to provide for me and my family, to it's the time to shift my business into the extra income category. So I'm still keeping my business. I'm changing my focus. I'm going to be focusing more on content creation and building up the blog and the podcast. And when I get balloon jobs, I'm going to take them. I keep my equipment, but I'm stopping major focus on my business. I'm stopping marketing, etc. It's time to just kind of let it be what it is, because I'm going to focus on something else now. Anyway, to sum up, it's been quite the journey. I've been doing this entrepreneurship thing for 10 years. I've been doing this podcasting thing, this going on 3.5 years now, 4 years if you account for the 2 years missing. So let's give this a try. Hope you enjoy being with me on the journey as I go, as I tackle in-depth things about these lessons I've learned the hard way as we go on this entrepreneurship journey. This is why I call myself your friendly neighborhood entrepreneur, Isaiah O'Connor. If today's episode added value to your day, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment and consider giving us a stellar 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. Whether it's Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, or more. And remember, if you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, I will personally read it out in the next episode. To support the show, you can make a one-time gift by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/bootstrap, donate through PayPal at paypal.me/IOCPOD, or make a contribution on our Patreon page at patreon.com/IOCPOD. Your support keeps the episodes coming. For even more content and exclusive perks, join our Patreon community at patreon.com/IOCPod. Patrons enjoy ad-free episodes, access to our private Discord server, early content previews, and a lot more. And here's an exciting offer. Get your free trial of our $5 a month Bootstrapper Community Explorer tier. This exclusive tier grants you ad-free content, Discord server access, and early content previews. Join us and be part of the inner circle. If you're feeling more generous, those who join tiers $25 a month and up will have a chance to be a featured guest on this podcast. A massive thank you to Wintergotten for generously providing the incredible intro and outro music at no cost. We appreciate their support. Be sure to check out Wintergotten's amazing work on YouTube at youtube.com/@Wintergotten. Until next time, I'm your friendly neighborhood entrepreneur, Isaiah O'Connor, signing off. This is the O'Connor Bootstrap Podcast, brought to you by Athos Business Solutions. For our companion podcast, the Athos Business Podcast, hosted by Jason St. Clair, along with past episodes and related blogs, visit our website at athos.com. That's ATHEOZ.com or theoz.com. Goodbye for now.